Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our video unboxing and first impressions look at the BlueBo S1. This is an unlocked quad-band GSM smartphone that sells on GearBest for under $150. It goes on sale sometimes for even lower. At this price, you're getting a very impressive design because it claims to be one of those bezel-less phones. Very similar in style to the Xiaomi Mi Mix, but obviously this is at a fraction of the cost. Specifications aren't bad either. It features the Helio P25 octa-core processor clocked at 2.5 GHz, in addition to having 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigabytes of built-in storage. In addition, it has a 13 megapixel rear-facing camera, and the 5.5-inch display is full 1080p. In addition, it has a 2.5D curve crafted by Corning Gorilla Glass 4, so it's nicely protected. The phone itself, again, also has a back like the Mi Mix, which is probably crafted out of glass, which is also fairly exciting. And you can see that it features Wi-Fi, GPS, Bluetooth, all the essentials, and it uses USB Type-C for charging, which is going to be pretty interesting. Alright, so let's lift up the packaging here. This is the first BlueBo smartphone that we are actually getting our hands on, so we are pretty eager to check out their skin on top of Android and how their devices perform in general. Setting the phone to the side for a second. Underneath here we have the accessories. The first one we have probably the SIM card SIM ejector tool, and there's also a protective case that you get for free, which is pretty nice, especially at this low price point as an unlocked 4G phone. Here's a warranty card. Next we have the instruction manual that is documenting the various features. There is a micro SD card if you want to expand on the memory, although again with 64 gigs that's already quite a lot of storage. Here we have a thank you card from BlueBo, and then there's also what looks like a tempered glass screen protector, which is again pretty nice extra. So this is what it looks like. You can see it's bezel-less. Although if the display is already protected by Corning Gorilla Glass 4, it should already be quite resistant to daily wear, but that's an extra layer of protection that you get. The case here is fairly simple. It's just a kind of rubber case, but you can see, again, the phone is very angular and boxy, just like the Mi Mix is designed. Alright, so in here we have what looks like the cables. And that includes actually the SIM card ejector tool is in this compartment, along with the USB Type-C to a 3.5mm jack. So it seems like this phone unfortunately doesn't have a standard headphone port. So you have to use this adapter, or you can use Bluetooth, just like the iPhone, just like a lot of flagships these days. With this type of specifications on such a low-cost phone, I would even classify this as a higher mid-tier, maybe even getting into flagship level territory for BlueBo at least. So spec-wise, it does seem to be fairly powerful. Another standard USB Type-C cable for charging is included, and that's it. So no headphones are in the box. Setting this off to the side and taking a look at the phone next, let's remove the protective film. There we go, and there's kind of the IMEI number is printed on the sheet as opposed to on the back of the device itself. On first impressions, the phone itself is very glossy. The back here is indeed made out of what seems like glass, so it does feel actually pretty solid in the hand. It's a lot heavier than you would think. Here it is next to the ZTE Warp 7, which is another 5.5-inch device. You can see that it's definitely going to be a bit shorter just because it doesn't have larger bezels in the front. You can see that the ZTE device does have the large top and bottom bezels, whereas BlueBo S1, of course, gets rid of the top and the left and right, or at least tries to minimize it. There's still a little bit of a border because it needs to squeeze in a few sensors such as a earpiece and a proximity light sensor, but the you can see front-facing camera has been moved to the bottom here just for for space purposes. There's also a fingerprint scanner on the front as well, so you can unlock it just by tapping on it. Very glossy phone. Edges here are also made out of this very shiny kind of ceramic material, but it feels, again, very solid in terms of build for such a low-cost device. You have the SIM card tray, nothing on the very top. On the right-hand corner, there's just the power on-off switch, in addition to a volume rocker, which is fairly tactile and responsive. Let's tap on the power key and see if there's any juice. Seems like there is a little bit. The bottom here just features the speaker in addition to the microphone, and there is a USB Type-C port, and that's it. So a very clean design. Front again just has that home button / fingerprint sensor. So this is the initial boot. Again, you can see that the display does have a slight curve on the edges that makes swiping and navigation feel a bit more responsive. The back here also features the aforementioned 13 megapixel camera. It's a dual lens setup, so on paper at least, there's a second depth sensing camera that can create a mock kind of bokeh effect that blurs out the background, just like a lot of flagship phones these days. Again, like the iPhone 8, iPhone 10, and other such devices on the market. So we'll have to test whether it works well or not, but at least you do have an extra feature there. There's also a dual LED flash. So again, in terms of features, it seems like it has a lot to offer on paper. And again, the build is also quite responsive and quite good. Right, so the phone has powered on. You can see the display also seems to be fairly bright and vibrant. It's an IPS panel which has good viewing angles, and it's a laminated display, which means that the distance between the screen and the glass is very minimal. Interestingly, there isn't really a standard kind of Android setup process because we are running on what looks like a very customized version of Android, so it skips some of the initial setup. So perhaps if we want to add a Google account, we have to do that ourselves later on. But you can see that the overall interface here is very colorful. It's almost like iOS because there isn't a universal app drawer at the bottom. Because this is basically just a launcher, you can install your own if you want to have a more traditional experience. But it should be fairly straightforward for first-time smartphone users as well. And it's not that different from many of these Chinese OEMs producing Android phones. They tend to omit the universal app drawer and go for something like this, where all your apps are displayed on unlimited pages. So there are quite a few pre-installed programs. There are the standard stuff like the Play Store. You can see the logos have been changed as well. There's an FM radio, there's access to standard maps, there's Google Search, sound recorders, and most of these things are actually standard. They just look different because the icons have been tweaked from what you see on a stock device. But in terms of bloatware, there's actually not that much stuff. A few service options like banking, food, discount, which are probably not going to be standard, but everything else is fairly typical. Overall, the navigation here seems to be surprisingly snappy. Again, it has an octa-core processor, 2.5 gigahertz, so that should be really good enough for most people to use, even for intensive gaming as well as for general navigation. Otherwise, the bottom here, you can also hide these keys if you want to make the screen a little bit larger, and you can use the kind of fingerprint sensor to go back home, and it acts kind of like a home key. So for instance, tapping on this once more takes you back. So that's pretty much it. There's obviously a lot of kind of customization going on, so we'll have to play with it a bit more to find out exactly what has been changed and what hasn't, and come out with a more complete review. The screen here seems to be, again, fairly sensitive and responsive, and again, we are running on Android 7.0 Nougat out of the box, so that's pretty exciting. Alright guys, so that's been our video, unboxing and first impressions look at the BlueBo S1. It claims to be, again, one of these low-cost bezel-less phones. It's not, truly bezel-less, but the ones on the sides have been minimized, especially with this curved edge, and the one on the top, of course, is shrunken down compared to a lot of, current-day mid-tier devices. And again, at this price point, it has compelling hardware regardless of the design, and furthermore, again, the design itself does look fairly modern and much more expensive than the price would suggest. So thanks for watching this video here at OS Reviews. Be sure to stay tuned for our full in-depth review coming out soon on the BlueBo S1.